How can you, just like I asked my client, how can you turn this loss into a valuable lesson that can pave a more abundant path forward for you? And this is what this client did. She answered that question.
I was terrified of failure, like horrifically terrified of it, because I grew up always fearing making mistakes. I feared what would happen if I did something wrong. Hey everybody, and welcome to Evolve Ventures, where we are making evolution possible for growth-minded humans through vulnerable lessons, stories, and technology. I am your host, Bianca Thomas.
And I'm your host, Emilia Smith. Welcome back to our new listeners. Welcome. We are going to be digging into episode number 135, Motivation Monday, Turn Your Losses into Lessons. If I had a nickel for every single loss, I swear to you, I'd be wealthier than one of the other Jack Nickel dimes out there that feels as though they're rich AF. Yes, exactly. I've had more losses or seemingly more losses in my life than I feel like a lot of people that I come across do. But the differentiating factor, which makes me feel as though I have so much wealth, is because I've turned them into lessons. And B, I know that you're the same way. And so while I might not have a penny for every single loss that I've turned into a lesson, I definitely have a metaphorical penny, which has made me so wealthy in that aspect of how abundant I am when it comes to some of these losses. So we're going to get into that in these episodes and help you feel at least a penny wealthier with some of the losses that you've had.
All right.
Solid.
Let's get it. For the majority of my life, honestly, aside from the last 5 years, I was terrified of failure, like horrifically terrified of it, because I grew up always fearing making mistakes. I feared what would happen if I did something wrong, because I was always bashed for every mistake that I made. And I learned basically to bash myself and to be so hateful and horrible to myself whenever I made a mistake. So whenever I messed up, whenever I didn't do what I told myself I was going to, if I got an 80 on a test and didn't get the 100 I was supposed to get, I was so hateful to myself, and I was so horrible to myself. And I know that there's so many people out there who do the same thing. It's like you're just so mean to yourself because of the fear of what failure means about you. That if you make a mistake, you are a mistake. That if you mess up, you are a mess up. And the identification and the personalization with the mistakes that I made, it made me really scared of trying. So I ended up developing a really fixed mindset of you're either good or you're not. You're either perfect or you're not. And instead of trying to actually become that, what I actually used to do was try to pretend to be it. So I was a very, very insecure person who just tried to surround herself with people who were like, I thought were cool or I thought were whatever. Because it's like, well, if they like me, then maybe I am that. And so it made me really scared of being quote unquote found out or of actually having to try. But the challenge with that is I never actually learned that that failures and that challenges don't make you less than, they actually make you better. So 5 years ago, I was introduced to, or I met my very first, mentor and really good friend who helped me to get on a growth journey, who helped me to see like, hey, B, if you make mistakes, they're actually opportunities. You can actually pick the mistake apart and learn from it and work through it. But the challenge was I didn't actually believe that. I didn't believe I could. I didn't believe that I was smart enough, good enough, competent enough, good enough of a person to be able to take the things that happened and turn them around. And I think so many of us are going through that right now, where it's like, I can't afford to make another mistake, because what is it going to mean about me if I do? What's going to happen to me if I do? Am I just going to be this failure, this loser, this whatever for the rest of my life? But that fear is keeping you stuck. Shit happens. It does. Things are going to happen. But when you run away from the challenge, when you run away from the opportunity, you don't actually give yourself the opportunity to see that you have the capability and the potential to turn the things that happen into things that are extraordinary. And that's honestly what I've done throughout my life. I could go on here and I can tell you guys of all of the terrible things that I've done and all of the mistakes that I've made and all the bad relationships that I've been in and just all of the bad choices that I've made, but it doesn't matter. What matters is the fact that I've stopped letting myself off the hook saying, you know what, bad things just happen and I can't do anything about it. I forced myself to surround myself with people who helped me develop the belief that I can do something about it. And I did. And that is truly the only reason why I've been able to become the person that I am today, is because I took all of the terrible things that I've done and the terrible things that have happened to me, and I made them into something. I turned those losses into lessons, and it's made all the difference.
I was going to tell a story about me and my home, the current home that I'm in, and how I lost the bidding war of a condo that I fell in love with, just 3 months prior to finding the condo that I'm in now and that I'm deeply in love with. And what you just talked about, B, I think bringing this other story about a client that happened earlier today, the story, so much more powerful perhaps in this specific unique context for our listeners than my personal story around that. But for sure we'll get into that story at some other point in the podcast. But my heart was so full. So I had a coaching call just before we got back into these podcasting topics. And right before we got off the call, she had said to me, Emilia, I am so grateful for you. And I'm paraphrasing here, but some of the words that really jumped out to me was, I'm so grateful for you because I am so and finally in love with the woman I'm becoming and the woman I am today. And it was like the sweetest thing that I had heard, because in her saying that and making sure that I heard that before we got off our coaching call, it was a very clearly, thank you so much for all of the work that we've done. And the why underneath that, what actually happened was, in that coaching call, we were going through her dating profile for one of the apps that she had shown me. Because when we first initially got into this coaching call, we were talking about one of the dates that she had gone on and one of these people that she was talking to. And it got to the point where this person, it was so obvious to her now that this person was so not aligned with her values. And while he looked good online, he talked really well, his demeanor was like so enticing for her. This client, let's call her Sally, former Sally would have never seen all of the red flags that today she now has acknowledged, has been okay with putting a pin in it and saying no thank you, and walking away from and saying that's not something that I'm interested. I'm already over it. A former version of her, even just a year ago, would have probably not seen all of these red flags of this person, of this person she was entertaining, of getting into a relationship with. She would have never seen those and would have never admitted to herself how much she doesn't want to deal with these things in a person and be in this cycle again. And so while a couple days ago, there was definitely a moment that she came to where it felt like a big loss, right? Because when you're out there and you're in the dating scene, and I know a lot of people can relate to this, you get so excited to find love. You get so excited to go on a date. You get so excited to just have a genuine conversation that actually could lead into a relationship, that could be empowering, that could be, you know, what you've been waiting for this whole long. There's no other topic that's more delicate when we talk about love. And I know this because I, you know, I coach so many people in this, and this is something that is, when we're talking about losses, is something that is so, so delicate when it comes to our hearts. And I was so proud of her because while she gave me that recognition, she gave herself that recognition, where she was able to turn what seemingly was such a deep loss of like, this was just another one and now I'm back to square zero. No, what she did was like, we went through her whole profile and was like, this is not in alignment with who I am nowadays. So I'm going to update this. This word doesn't represent me. This picture doesn't represent me. And so she took what was like a not aligned date and she allowed that to be the biggest lesson for her to go even deeper into what her core values are. And I'm so effing proud of her. When you listen to this, you know that I'm clapping for you all along the way, girl. But here's the thing. All of us, whether it be in intimate relationships or, you know, in a housing crisis or whatever, we're all going to have losses. That is the fact of life. And we all experience a degree of loss at some point in our life. And there's so much beauty in that. My question to each one of you is, how can you, just like I asked my client, how can you turn this loss into a valuable lesson that can pave a more abundant path forward for you? And this is what this client did. She answered that question and we got down into some actual actions that she can take, which I'm so excited for her because that's going to allow her to attract. That's one step closer to attracting her dream partner. Had she not taken the ownership, had she not turned this loss into a lesson, that would have never been possible. So I'm super excited for that client, but I'm also really excited for each one of our listeners here, because now you can ask yourself the question when you do have an experience of a loss or you have a failure or you flop forward in something, what is the lesson that this is teaching me?
Yeah, buddy.
So
All
that's all I got on this one. Episode suggestion. I actually didn't have an episode suggestion for this one. So B, while I kind of pull up my Apple Podcast here and look at Evolve Ventures on Apple Podcast and give it a 5-star rating. No, kidding.
No, but really though, go give us a 5-star rating.
While I look at this, what would your final takeaway and episode suggestion be?
Final takeaway would be, don't fear losses. It might hurt in the moment. It might be painful. But out of every loss I've ever experienced, like tenfold I got from it because I decided to turn it into something. I decided to use it rather than let it consume me. So yeah, that is my that is my takeaway. I am burnt out. Jesus Christ. In the episode suggestion is 52, perception versus reality. Which are you choosing?
Oh my God. I forgot that we had that episode. That's a goodie.
That's a goodie.
Good call. All right.
Thanks,
so
man.
my episode suggestion for our listeners on this Fuego Monday is, on top of what B just suggested, it's 124, the biggest secret to growth. We talk about what and how to go about transforming your pain into something that you can build off of. So we're on our way. Hopefully you are off to a great Monday, and hopefully this is something that can transfer some more of that Monday motivational vibe energy into your being. You can turn any single loss that you have today into a lesson, and we will talk to you in the next episode.
Bye, everyone.